Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks, to the Hungry Gamers back with another episode of Boards and Brews, and today I am rejoined by my sometimes occasional regular co-host, Original Don, co-designer of Backyard Chickens, the best game about backyard chickens you will ever play. And
Everybody.
we're gonna almost jump right in. So I only got two questions to open with today. The first one is, what is your brewed beverage today? And then what is the next game gonna hit your table?
Yeah, so it's morning. We're recording in the morning, so it's a simple Americano that I made with my Nespresso Virtuo machine, not a sponsor. Uh, and a very nice tea kettle that I bought. So that's what I'm drinking. Next game on the table is a toss-up. I've got a 10 by 10 going. You can kind of see the tracker there behind me, and I need to get a play of Maximum Apocalypse in if I'm going to progress that at all. So that I think is going to be the next one. I'm also kicking around the idea of a solo game of dwelling, so it probably depends whether I get people to the table or not.
And so I too, as it is the morning, just have some drip coffee from the special coffee club that I should see if they want to sponsor. I talk about them a lot. That sends my wife a special coffee from somewhere in the world every month. So that's what I have
Fun.
right now. And next one on for me on the table is actually literally halfway set up on the table is the weirdest game I've ever played in my life.
What?
It's called Tsukiyumi Full Moon Down. It's from Gray Fox Games and King Raccoon Games out of France. And the theming behind this game, and the spoiler, there's a new expansion coming. They've sent me the expansion factions, have asked me to look at them. So, that's coming at the end of the month. But the theme behind the game is, so the moon is actually not the moon. It was actually a prison for an evil dragon named Tsukiyumi, and it has crashed into the earth, which caused all kinds of apocalyptic nonsense. And as it's kind of cracked open, also in the prison were a bunch of evil Oni. And so the dragon is sending the evil Oni out to take over the world. However, at the same time, in this apocalypse, all these other crazy things have happened. So you have like the boar people who are now sentient, and you have like sentient bugs, and you have cyber robot samurai, and you have land whales because the oceans are all gone. They're now apparently like a big puddle, but somehow the whales survived. Now they're their own intelligent faction, and moon turtles, and all these fighting around the moon in the middle of the board with these oni running around is weird. Like if that doesn't sound weird, everybody, you're weird because that is bizarre. The gameplay itself is actually pretty cool. It does this really cool thing where you select these action cards, and the action card in the back tells you what your resources you're going to get. Then you flip your card over, and it has different phases on there. And then when you go in to fight somebody, the person who attacks chooses their attack card. But on the bottom of that card has the responses the other player can take. So it picks what I'm doing to you, and then it also gives you like four options for how you can respond. It's a very interesting game. It's just super super weird. So that's next on the table for me. There is no chicken faction though, unfortunately.
It'll come. Just waiting for expansion.
Like normally that's a joke that we make with Peter Vaughn about he needs a chicken faction. Considering there are
Mhm.
now land whales and pig people and turtles, it's
It's the obvious next thing.
like legitimately there could be a chicken faction coming to this game, which is what everybody was really waiting for. But that's not what we are here for. We're here to do a recap of KublaCon, which is, I think, the biggest convention in California that's just solely board game related. Obviously, you got like Comic Con that has a little bit of board games there, but that's not about board games. And if it's not the biggest, it's, one of them. And now we're not talking huge. I don't know what, like maybe 8,000 people there, something like that, maybe.
Something like that. I haven't looked at the numbers.
Yeah.
It might be, I don't know how big Strategicon in LA is, but they seem to be the two biggest in California. And they both happen on Memorial Day. I think there's two Strategicons, but they're both happening simultaneously, so you can't go to both.
Well, there's now two KublaCons. There's going to be another one in the
Hmm,
fall, which I
you're
guess
right.
we have to decide if we're going to go to this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal. But anyhow, so just kind of our usual startup, just overall, how was the con in general? How did it run? Was it comfortable? Yada yada yada.
Comfortable, yes. It was all very efficient. It's funny, I somebody I knew was there before me on Friday and just said, "Oh man, the line is so long." And I got there and there was no line. So it was clearly just like that first rush of people. You just go up, they give you a QR code to scan to get your badge. So there's no fussing, spelling your name for people, all of that. I know just from the start, it was very efficient. It was very organized. There's no mess. There's no confusion around where things are. One of my kids goes just to play RPGs, and that was all really well organized. He waited until the week before to sign up for games, and there were still spots, and that was great. So
Wow, that's
yeah.
funny because my friend Max, who does art, just mostly just RPGs, he on the other side of the coin was in Paris when the registration opened up, and
Mhm.
he left dinner early to go back to the hotel so he could open up his computer. He had like five different tabs open and had them like partitioned on his screen and like stuff on his phone, so he would be first. And he's
Well,
like,
he
"Yeah, I
is
got this
not.
thing."
Yeah, he is not 17. At 17, you can't be bothered with that sort of planning and responsibility.
Yeah, well, I just find it funny that meanwhile, and also William also was like, "Yeah, I got the stuff I wanted to," and here's
Hmm.
Max. He's like, "Sorry, Paris, I'm out." You know. Um, yeah, it took me 5 minutes to get my badge when I got in. I got in,
Yeah,
I guess, a little later than you did, and just walked right up. It was very simple. The only, and I actually, and also I wanted to point out, I talked about this in my other video. I thought the food was really good this year.
it was good. They had
Yeah.
some of that last year, but even from that, so what they have is kind of this food court thing that they're calling indoor food trucks. That's what they called them last year. I didn't see that term this year, but this year was even a slight upgrade from when it was first introduced last year. So yeah, good stuff. There was great. I'm blanking on the food. I mean, there was pizza. There were there was not dim sum. That's not the right term.
Yeah, they
But
had
just
Chinese food like beef and broccoli and salt and
yeah,
pepper chicken, and they had some kind of curry. I didn't try the curry, and they had meat wraps. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
and
I,
it
I
was Star Wars themed, which surprised me. I
that's right. I ate a tauntaun.
Yeah. My conclusion is somebody who goes to the con works for Lucasfilm or something, because otherwise that would be a very expensive deal for an
Yeah,
event this size.
yeah, I would have to assume, but yeah, and it was expensive, but then again, we door dashed one night, and it
Hmm.
was equal
Much
price,
more expensive. Yeah.
or yeah, maybe even a little more expensive. Though that we did get like a fancy bento box place, but still about the same price. This is the first con I've ever been to where I actually ate more of my meals at the food provided than elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
Same.
so I
Those
thought that
bento
was
boxes were good though.
yeah, I thought that was a nice little change of pace. They had I didn't go into it much this year. The Protospiel room was hopping. It was just
Yeah.
real loud in there. It was so hopping. It was just so loud. I was like, I'm old. I
We
can't.
need to go back to a bigger room. They had one of the big halls a few years ago, and now they've been in this smaller room for a couple of years, and it's just a cacophony. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody's having a good time in there. It's a great environment. It's well run. It was just loud.
I would venture to say, I bet you could switch the miniatures gaming rooms with that. Maybe.
That would
Oh,
be interesting.
there's a little.
No, I think they need big tables.
Yeah, they do.
That is a huge room too. That
Yeah, that's a
miniatures
good
room.
point. I think it's that room's so huge. It's hard. I'm not actually understanding how much square footage they need. So that's fair enough. Fair enough. Fine, fine, fine. Overall, I thought it was really good. The only challenge that I had was I ran a game, and this is something I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to do more of at conventions. Just run a couple games, mostly because I feel like no, now I'm giving something back.
Hmm.
Um, but also I get to pick a game that I just want to play, and now it's
Hmm.
guaranteed I will get to play this game because people will sign up for anything. And so that was cool. So I got to play Battle for Greyport, which you jumped in the last minute because there was an opening, and I loved the game, but there was some kind of mess up somewhere on the labeling of tables, and I couldn't find where I was supposed to run the game. And finally, I went downstairs. I was like, "This is what it says. I don't know where that is." And they were like, huh, I don't know. I was like, oh, I bet that means this. And we went up there. I was like, well, there's nothing on this table. This must be it. And so then I was able to send a message to everyone who had signed up, and almost everyone showed up. And it was fine. So that was the only negative thing that happened, and that wasn't even negative. But we are hard hitting journalists here, so we gotta let that be known.
How to give the whole truth.
Yeah, nothing but the
Um,
truth.
right.
But yeah, I had a really good time. I had a really good time overall. All right, let's jump into our best of the con categories. And so for everybody, this is what we got coming. We have the best moment, the weirdest moment, the biggest surprise, the worst choice, the best win, and our game of the con. Then we're going to wrap up the episode talking about Tesseract, which we've talked about many, many times. So I'll let you go first, Don, on the best moment of the con for you.
Yeah, so I picked something that's not my moment exactly, but I had a
It's
coworker
really all of
who
our
was,
moments. I mean, it's really all of us. We made it
yeah,
happen.
sure. So I had a coworker from who came to the con. It was his first con experience ever, and this is somebody that I taught the Castles of Burgundy. I don't know, 2, 3 years ago on Board Game Arena, and he was immediately hooked. He plays it constantly on BGA. He said he has like 1,000 games, and I don't think he's exaggerating. He just constantly has several going. And they had a qualifier for the World Series of Board Games. And the first tournament Friday night was the Castles of Burgundy. And he came in and he played that and he won that tournament.
From
And
what I'm
that
gathering, he didn't just
is the best
win.
moment for me.
He
Oh, he
smoked
crushed.
them. Like it
Yeah, he's like, I got 250 points on map whatever. I love that he knows the numbers of the maps.
yeah.
And they were like, I've never seen anybody get that score on that map. And he's like, I'm pretty sure I got a better score on that map on BGA.
Yeah,
So
he's like
it's great.
it's like taking Michael Jordan in his prime into like a
Yeah.
JV middle school game. Like it just
So we were all very proud of him. We were really rooting for him. He didn't know his next game to play in the rounds until Saturday night, and it was Ticket to Ride, which he had never played. And, he did some studying the night before, went in. He did not win that next round, but we were all set for him to go to Vegas for
yeah.
the finals, which is there's like 15 games and he's played like two of them.
Yeah. It's weird how
But we were
invested
going to
I
set up
got.
a training program.
Yeah, I got so like I was gonna make a montage, like everything. I got so invested, but then the third game that they played, and then had he pulled out the ticket to ride, then I think there was no way because the third game was Dune Imperium, and like
Oh, yeah, that would have been hard to go into cold.
yeah, you can't pick that up in like a day.
Yeah,
But anyhow, yes, that was awesome, and he has a medal now that he can wear, which is
he does
amazing.
have a medal. I told him to wear it to work. He did not do that.
Oh man, well, there's still another week, another week
Yeah,
coming. Um, so for me, I had a hard time picking just a single thing that really stood out. And so I don't consider this my best win, but I'm going to say the winning Alderman game is what I'm going to pick as the best one. Not because I won, because and I had no idea who was going to win that game. Like zero clue. And this was a game that we struggled through and then kind of got into, and then we struggled, then we got into it, and then at the end, I was like, well, apparently I am now the town councilman. Thank you very much. It just was such a surprise that I was able to somehow figure out how that game worked. So I mean, because truly my best moment is actually Benji winning, but you already took that. Because I've never met Benji. He's very, very nice. And his partner is also awesome.
yes.
But I was so invested. Like had he not won the Burgundy, I would have been crushed.
Same.
Like
That was a happy moment.
it was just so awesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
And, for his first con, he got a lot of games in with strangers, like something I don't do. And I've been going to cons for like 8 years, and I don't just walk up and say, "Hey, can I join your game?"
oh,
And
that's right.
it's exactly what you're supposed to
You
do.
played the 90-hour game of Ark Nova.
Yes. And it's just because it was like one of the people he had played Burgundy with, and he just walked up to see what they were doing, and they're like, "Hey, we have another seat."
Yeah,
It's great.
I have a hard time with that too. For someone that as outgoing as I seem, going up and joining random people's games, I have a very hard time with that.
Yeah.
Also the other close runner up for me was our game of consumption with the designer Karen.
That
Just
was a great game.
seeing, I mean, we both got smoked, but just how
Hmm.
much fun she was having playing with people who knew
Hmm.
how to play. I just
Yeah.
that was a close second for me. All right, so
Yeah.
this next one is one that we initially had the same thing on, and this was a gimme. And I put this category in here just because the story needs to be told. What was the weirdest moment of the con for you? And I'm going to let you take the whole story here.
I think you tell it better than I do, but I'll give it a shot. So we're sitting there playing a game. We're kind of in a higher traffic area, so lots of people walking by. It doesn't matter what game it was because that was not the point of this. But this woman walks up and just says out of nowhere, "Can I buy your game?" And I don't want to make fun of her too much. It was just an odd moment. There may be some mental health issues there. So I don't want to ridicule her, but it was just such an odd interaction. She just walks up and like big eyes, "Can I buy your game?" And it was not clear whether she had even looked at the game. She just said this. And, we're both caught off guard. And you said, "No." And she said it again. And then you said, "No." And she turns to me and she says, "Can I buy his game?" I don't know how she knew it was your game and not my game, but
That's a
she's
good
like, "Can I
point.
buy his game?" And I just like, it's not mine to sell. And then she asked you, "How much is it?" And this is something that a publisher sent you. So you honestly said, "I don't actually know." And she's like, "How about $200?" And, it's one of those moments where you're just like, how do we get out of this without some, odd, negative, explosive reaction? And, I think we were both very good about being calm in the situation and making sure like we let her get it out. And then she wandered off and said something like, "You guys are no fun," or
Yeah, we ruined the
something
fun.
like that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
did actually see her a couple of times
Same.
um throughout the rest of the con, and she seemed perfectly happy, but she definitely gave me the stink eye.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hadn't heard
like,
that.
I just yeah, well, because it's again, like, whatever, people do their things, but it really felt like she clearly expected the answer to be yes.
Yes, she
Like,
did.
in a very bizarre way, and this is and so I'll tell everybody because the other people that we told this to, they're like, "I just sold my game for $200." So here's the
Huh.
thing. This is from a designer, direct from the designer who lives in Australia. No, he lives in New Zealand. All the copies of the game were in Australia. He had to get his mom to send a copy from Australia to get to us. You can't find the game anywhere. So like $200, like he may have paid $90 to ship this thing. So, like, this is not like, might copy a Ticket to Ride because that would have been right out. I'd been like, okay, bye. I was like, let's go, Don. Walk away from the
You would have
table.
had to say, "Let me see the cash first." But yeah.
Yeah. But yes, that was truly a weird moment. But I'm going to piggyback on that and say
Hmm.
what my weirdest moment was. We were playing Rise of the Gnomes with our friend Dan George, the designer and publisher. And a guy came up and was looking at the game. We were having a good time. And he was really
Hmm.
intrigued by the game. And he was like, "Oh, how do you get this game?" And I was just talking to him because Dan was still teaching the game to one other person. And he was looking on the backer kits because you can still pre-order through backer kits. And he's like, "Well, $90, that's a pretty good deal. Oh, but then shipping and stuff." I was like, "Hold on." And I was like, "Dan, you want to sell this guy your game when we're done? Because I know Dan has more." And he was like, "Yeah." And so I literally sold somebody. I did her trick
You
successfully
did.
where
Yeah.
everybody was happy. And this guy got a deluxe copy with some extra bonuses in it for a fantastic price. Like, honestly, I would consider just have buying it for that price. And so, but I sold someone else's game right off the table.
I think there was even some prototype stuff in there that Dan was telling him about. It's just
Oh,
like, these are
yeah.
just printouts of things I'm designing and they're not done. But just like he got extra stuff that nobody has in their game.
Yeah.
Not even
Unreleased
Dan
action.
now.
Yeah. So just, I'm going to take that one. All right. Moving into the biggest surprise. And, yeah, go ahead. You take it again.
So I'm going to go with a couple of lesser known titles on this. One is a game that I've had on my shelf for a long time, and I bought this game because there used to be an event here in the Bay Area called Protospiel San Jose, and they would take over this huge play space in a game store and just do prototyping, like play testing all weekend long. It was like a convention just for play testing. And there's a guy named Michael Lipton who had this prototype of a Zeppelin racing game that my kids and I just fell in love with. And every year we would come back. I think we went 3 years in a row, and every year he'd be there with it, and we'd make sure we got to play it again. It was so much fun. I don't know whatever happened to that game, but I saw he had this one published game, and I bought it a few years ago. It's from 2017. It's called Incoming Transmission. And I finally got it to the table with Benji actually, and it's basically a two-player game. You can play it 2 to 4, but like any more players, and they're just on the team with one of the players.
Mm.
So the theme of the game is you're giving clues from Earth to the last cadet on a failing space station. And there's a bad signal, and so all you can do is send them a list of commands, and you do that by handing them a stack of cards. Like these are the commands I'm sending you. They do not know what order they're in. And there are some random signal cards that can come out, and sometimes one of the orders will be in the right place, and they just have to figure out the order that the rest go in. And it was surprisingly fun. I was optimistic about it, but I'm not always great with deduction games and all of that. And, I'd rather be in the clue giving position, which I was here. It was crunchy. Um, it was a little agonizing for Benji trying to come up with the right order, and we came very, very close to winning. It came down to one command set of commands I sent him, and he put them in the wrong order and went the wrong direction. And so then we just didn't have enough turns left to correct it. But you know, for a game where you're not, limited communication, you're not supposed to talk to each other because you just have these commands you're sending over, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm anxious to try it again. Another one, just a real quick mention. There's a game called Waterfall Park that was on the Play to Win shelf that I played with the kids. I would call it Chinatown Junior. It's like you're getting sets of real estate, and you're trying to get adjacent spaces and build large versions of the same property. It's basically Chinatown, but you're making an amusement park. It was a lot of fun. What surprised me about it was the production. It was not an expensive production, but they had like these, what are they called, vacuum form shapes, like cheapish plastic, but shaped into a thing. And they made little racks to put your frames on that you use to claim the thing. So for an inexpensive kind of entry level type game, it was a nice production. And I was really impressed with it. So that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, we almost played the transmissions game at the house the other
Hmm.
day. And I think Sarah came home and we played Distilled instead. But
Yep.
yeah, so I'm glad that one turned out because the deduction is not usually my jam either, and I'm just because I'm bad at it, and I'm also bad at giving clues that other people will necessarily understand. So I'm just kind of bad all around.
Right.
So it's probably better that you killed Benji instead of me killing you. Um, so for
We have
me,
to try it though. I thought it was interesting.
yeah, well, we'll take it on the train. We'll
All
do
right.
it. We'll play it on Train Con.
There we go.
For me, it's got to be this game called Relic Blade because this is not a board game proper. This is a miniatures skirmish game, but it is the beer and pretzels of miniature skirmish games. It plays on a small board. It plays on the 2x2 play space,
Hmm.
and you might, and apparently in the normal point buy game, it's like 100 points, which means you might have 3 models. Like that's the size of it, and all the combat and everything is just solely done by a d6. It tells you right on your little card, your normal like poker size card of, okay, well if I want to hit you, then I have to roll a 4 or better, and if you roll exactly a 4, you get a bonus. And then it tells you roll a d6 for the damage, and then they get to roll a d6 to block. That's it. And there's other little crunchy things in there. But this game was so fun, and it's lightning fast. And I was introduced to it the night that you were playing Gaslands for 37
Hmm.
hours, and I didn't actually get to play. I just kind of got to kind of hang out with someone that I used to work with, and she runs the painting area, and she was playing this. She invited me, and I didn't actually get to play. I played a few turns, but I got to understand how it works. It's also got really cool art, and it's by a somewhat local guy. So all that was really cool. But this game just stuck in my head. And
Hmm.
then our friend and designer of Hissy Fit, Chris Stone, his friend was there, and we were just chatting, and he was telling me about it, and he said, "Okay, tomorrow we'll play." And so he went and he got his stuff, he set it up for me, and we played 2 games in 45 minutes. So it's just lightning fast. Apparently, the designer encourages it being minis agnostic, like he makes metal minis that you can get, but he was like, "Yeah, no, whatever, do a print and play here, $3, print and play, whatever." So I like that it's affordable. but it also has like some silly things that happen. So we were fighting on a bridge, and I was able to push him off of the bridge because I missed.
That's
And this
fun.
dwarf, his ability is if you missed, push a guy an inch away. So I pushed him off of the bridge. He fell down, was knocked out, and I ran my goblin off of the bridge after him. And in my head, landed on top of him and killed him. It's not exactly how it works, with the rules, but it was delightful. So I can't get this game out of my head. I'm about to take off to the UK, but there's a very good chance when I come back, I will be ordering some of this stuff and trying to get done into a minis game. But it's so fun. It was so
Got
cool.
me curious.
Yeah, I'm so obsessed with this thing. Like I've been trolling around the website and like, what did it do? Oh, I could get this, but I don't want this. Definitely don't need the minis, but the minis look great. I'm tempted to get the minis because they look awesome, but no, I don't need the minis. So this is my life going on. So that was my biggest surprise because I love minis games in theory. Like I used to play Warhammer and like I love the theory of it, but it takes so long and there's always so many rules and so many edge cases and it's so expensive. I just have backed out of it. But so anyhow, super obsessed. Gonna move into worst choice. I'm gonna take this one first because you have a funnier answer. So the worst choice that I made was the night we played Dwellings. I just shouldn't have played. One, I played horribly. I got smoked, but that was the one night that on the way home, because I'm about 35 minutes away from my house. I was like, you know what? I should have left because I am tired. This is a bad choice. And I was fine. But you're driving, I was like, oh man, this is hard. So that was my worst choice. I should have left. Now, had I won the game, maybe it'd be different, but I didn't.
Yeah, 11 p.m. dwellings is always a crapshoot. And we played 5 player. We only had one new player. Like you should never play 5 players with a whole bunch of new people. But it was Benji, and Benji's a savant, so I wasn't worried about that. But it was a long game. I also played horribly. It was one of my worst games of dwelling in memory. So yeah, that maybe should have been at a different time of day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So what was your worst choice?
Oh, not selling Will's game.
Yeah,
That's the worst choice. That's $200 could have had in your pocket.
that's
That's all.
true.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, that's 10 tauntaun wraps,
Right.
right? Yeah. All right. So best win.
So I'm going to go with Tesseract. So we played Tesseract multiple times. I played it 3 times. I think you were in 2 of those games. And this is a great game. We're going to talk about it a bit more, but it's a crisis management game. You're playing cooperatively to avoid the end of the world, and it is always down to a wire. And you definitely feel like you're going to fail, kind of how you talked about the Red Dragon name game. Um, Tales from Greyport. Is that it? Yeah. Um,
Battle for
Battles of
Greyport.
Greyport. Sorry, my mind is not working this morning. So you halfway into the game, you're like, we're definitely going to lose, but we better play it out. And I had 2 out of 3 wins at Tesseract, and both of them felt glorious. And the one loss was no, it wasn't close. We lost horribly that first time we played on Friday night, but it was still fun. So I'm going to go with that as best win because won it twice. Any game that gets played multiple times at the same con has got to be special. So it was great.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that, that was great. I'm gonna
Oh,
go
I
with
was also sorry. I was also going to mention it's one of 2 games that I actually had a win in. Well,
really.
3. Rise of the Gnomes we won, but that was cooperative. Tesseract we won, which is cooperative, and then I won Avant Card. Those are
Uh,
the only games I won.
yeah, I won nothing except on Saturday when I won everything. Other than
Hmm.
that, I just lost, and then there was a moment where like the clouds opened up and the sun shone upon me, and I won everything on Saturday. But for me, it's got to be Rise of the Gnomes because it's the first time I've ever won a cooperative game of it with a lot of people. I've won at two and at three, but we had max player count. And when you play with the designer, Dan George, he, I worry about his emotional health when he plays this game because he is just like so sure that you're going to win, and he's so sure it's all over, that he's so sure you're going to win, and he's so like it is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And so we won, which was glorious. But the big thing was he pointed out that there is a single rule that I've been missing for years now, which may be the reason why I'm so bad at solo on it. So I'm really excited to go back because
What rule was that?
every time you destroy a known brewery, you get an extra 2 points.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd missed it or forgotten it or whatever. So winning that game was just glorious. Also knowing that I was not the problem. It wasn't me that almost made us lose in that one. It was Dan that was just beautiful. Which is going to bring us into the game of the con. And I'm actually going to do an audible. I wasn't going to say Rise of the Gnomes, but I think I'm going to do an audible off of it. And I'm going to say Consumption,
Mm.
which we played again. As I said, we played with the designer, and I just something about taking such a crunchy game and playing it in an hour and 10 minutes was just really cool. And just, I had a
Yeah.
good time, you had a good time. And then the fact that she had such a good time with it, I think that pushes it up because for those of you who don't know Karen, at every con she's there and she's teaching the game. And so she plays it, 3 or 4 times a con, but always with people who've never played before. And so it'll be a 2.5 hour experience when really, clearly, it can be done in an hour and 10 minutes. So I think
Clearly.
yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to Consumption. I wish we'd played with some of the expansions. We didn't think about it, but other than that, yeah. So I'm gonna give it to Consumption. How about you?
That is a good choice. I am gonna go with Rise of the Gnomes. It's hard to compete with that game, especially playing it with Dan. It's just so good. It's so much fun. That emotional roller coaster he takes us on is always incredible. I had Tesseract as a close second just because we had multiple good games of it at the same con. It's a surprisingly enjoyable game. So that one was also great. Consumption was so much fun. I also finally taught Federation to Adrian and his partner, which I've been wanting to do for a while, and that was fun. Not game of the con fun, but we haven't mentioned it yet. So that
Yeah,
is a
I'm
fantastic
actually
game that I discovered a couple months ago.
yeah, that's the only one that I'm actively disappointed I didn't get in to play. I'm not really disappointed because I wanted to play Relic Blade instead at that time, but yeah, that's the only one I was just disappointed I didn't get in on. Um, all right, so quick pause here where we're gonna do our sponsor bump, and that is Noble Knight Games. Everybody, if you're looking for used or new games, check out Noble Knight. I think legally I'm supposed to also tell you that the link that I have down in the description is an affiliate link, which means I'll get like 3% store credit with whatever you buy, but doesn't cost you anything more. So if you're looking for out of print games, that's where you should do it. Don, you're thinking about going to Noble Knight Games now, right?
Oh, every day.
Every day.
I need so many games.
Yeah. Well, you can also sell your games.
I do need to do that actually. I've got a pile that I'm staring at right now.
Yeah, it's has a pile gotten as tall as you yet?
No, not yet, but only because I moved some of them to the garage.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
So, coming back from that amazing commercial that you just saw, we are talking about Tesseract, which I know we've been talking about, but we thought we would actually do a full on review of it because both Don and I have it, and we've been playing it often. It's on Don's 10 by 10. And I do need to point out, because I did reach out to the publisher, and he asked me to just point out that if you have a copy of Tesseract, the tiles are labeled 1 through 8. Apparently, they're supposed to be labeled 1 through 4, and there's 2 of each. So 5 is a 1, 6 is a 2, 7 is a 3, 8 is a 4, which is difficulty level. There's only 4 difficulty levels. They're just variants. Is a mistake they had on the first printing, which brings you to the next point that they have a second printing in that you can get. But the amazing metal dice, they do not have a second round of that yet, but apparently they are coming, which is the only thing that I don't need in my life that I'm constantly tempted to buy. is the metal dice. So, speaking of the dice, Don, why don't you give us a quick rundown of what Tesseract is?
Sure. So, like I said, this is a crisis management game, meaning you are playing cooperatively to avoid the end of the world or, whatever crisis the game happens to have. In this one, it is the end of the world. There's a cube of dice that you set up at the beginning of the game, and there are four colors, and they're just D6s, so 1 to 6. Cubes, not dice. That's in the parlance of the game. They call them cubes. Um, and what you are trying to do is take those cubes, manipulate them, get the numbers right, and put them all on a grid where you have spaces for numbers 1 through 6 of each of the four colors. To win the game, you have to fill all of those spaces. If the cube runs out of if the tesseract runs out of cubes, or if you get six what are called breaches in the game, you lose the game collectively. And the kind of actions you can take are obviously take a cube off the thing and put it in your lab. You can modify a cube, which is move it up or down one. You can what do they call it? Contain a cube, which is to move it from your lab to the scoring board. I forget what it's exactly called. And
Yeah,
to
it's
do
a
that,
contain. Yeah, contain.
yeah, the action is contained. I don't remember what the board is called.
Oh, I see.
Um, and to do that, you have to have the cube in a set or a sequence. And that set or sequence has to either be all the same color or all different colors. And so there's a lot of work you have to do to get there. And the timer of the game is that at the end of everybody's turn, there is a threat phase where you are going to take the lowest cube off the Tesseract, roll it, and put it in the primed area. And the primed area has spaces for numbers 1 through 6. If you ever put a third or more of the same number down, that's what causes a breach. And like I said, if you get 6 breaches, you lose the game. So when you modify a die, you can modify one in your lab or you can modify one in the primed area. And so you're having to use some actions to manage that. You get 3 actions per turn, I didn't mention. So you're picking between those things. And then everybody has a character that they're playing, a role, like logistics expert, where you have a special action and kind of a latent ability, usually, that you can use as part of the game. How'd I do?
Pretty good, but you missed the biggest part of the gimmick, I think.
What's that?
The
Oh,
lazy Susan.
there is a lazy Susan under the Tesseract. So there's a little cardboard stand that you assemble and a plastic lazy Susan, and then you put a base on top of that, and the cube goes on top of all that. And so you've got it between you. You're able to spin it around and find the die that you're looking for. And yeah, it's a fantastic gimmick. The game would be good without it, but I would never play without it, of course.
Yeah, it's actually one of those times the gimmick is fully needed, I think, in there
Hmm.
because it would just be such a pain. But yeah, so I mean, clearly we've talked about that we both like it a lot. So, but if you had to pick, well, what are the one or two things that really make it pop the most for you?
It's extremely efficient. There's I don't see any wasted design space in this game. It clearly was play tested a lot. You can tell sometimes when a designer play tested a game to a certain extent and then said, "Okay, I'm brilliant, it's done," and they didn't do enough. You can see the noise that shouldn't be in there. You can see the things that don't quite work. This game is super efficient. The actions all make sense. The timing of it is very good. It is always a tense down to the wire game. That is, I think, the most surprising thing about it is like you're never completely sure you're going to win or lose. You're
Yeah,
mostly sure you're going to lose, and then when you win, you feel like you pulled something off.
yeah, it's very rare. I've found that you just get crushed by the game. It happens
Right.
occasionally because you're rolling dice, so it can happen. But very rarely, I always feel like there's that in this kind of game, that lovely feeling of at first you're like, okay, yeah, we got this, we got this. Oh my god, no, we don't have
Hmm.
this. This is over. We're all dead. This is terrible. We're the worst players. Oh my gosh, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. Oh, we didn't. Like it has that little roller coaster almost every single time. I
Yeah.
think I really like that. I think though, what I'm gonna call out, other than the beautiful looking cube of dice that spins, is the different characters you can play. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
there's 15 or whatever in the game, and every it really does change the way you play every single time. I mean, you can ignore them if you want.
Hmm.
You can probably still win, but just every one that you get, it just does something so different, which changes your strategy. The last game that we played, I was the demolitions expert, which I had never played before, and it has this fascinating ability to where if there's an identical cube in the primed area, which is where you get the breaches, I can just blow it up and it's gone to
Yeah.
protect us.
Yep.
Which it but it just means that it changed everything I was doing. It's like, oh, I need to take this die, which maybe isn't the best one. That's going to let us blow up a four that's out there, which is going to save, because that's saving us actually three actions, because we'd have to adjust that die three times to get it off of the thing. And yet, when we were playing, there was the linguist that was out there that was able to give other people dice and like change the numbers, I think is what her ability was.
Mhm.
Something like that. But it just changes up every single time. And I believe Benji was playing the one who got to download a die, and it was a two action thing, but he could like take any die and then give it out. So there's
Yep.
it's really simple, but it really changes up how you play every single time. I think that's just really, really cool. I think that's my favorite part.
Absolutely. The production is very good. It's not super fancy. Nobody would call this overproduced unless you bought the metal dice. But it's very simple and straightforward, but also everything you need to know is on the material somewhere.
Yep.
You and I both love a good player reference sheet, and you've got your lab board in front of you, which is where you put the dice between taking them off the Tesseract and getting them to the scoring sheet. And every action you can take is described on that sheet.
Yeah.
And I love that. And then there are actions, we haven't talked about this, but when the last cube is taken off of a column on the Tesseract, there are little icons that are uncovered. And when you uncover those, you have to execute that icon. And I don't think any of them are positive.
No,
So
it's always
yeah.
bad.
So one is like a chain reaction, which means you have to then prime another cube, take another low cube off and roll it and put it in the primed area. And all of those things are described at the top of I think the primed area or
The sheet that has the breaches on it is where those are.
yeah, that's right. On the sheet with the breaches, it has those icons and what you're supposed to do when they come up. And you find yourself referencing that a lot. And not because it's super complicated, but I think just because it's there and you can just go look it up. So I don't know. I really appreciate how much information is just on there. There are no hidden rules you have to remember. We have sometimes forgotten to check. Like if you contain a cube and that exact same cube is in the primed area, you destroy it, meaning it comes out of play and it reduces the threat there. I think
Yeah,
we've
we
had a lot of
forgot
games
about
where we've
that for a
forgotten that.
long time. That's
Yeah,
up there
which
with
is
the 2 points for destroying a gnome brewery. It's
yeah.
just game
The
changing.
yeah, the difference though is it's written right there in the primed area. It says
Oh
to
yeah,
check that.
yeah. No,
And
we
so
we just
we're just
can't read.
blind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it was one of your kids was like, "Why aren't we doing this, Dad?" Oh,
So I love those little touches in production, and then putting this game away is super easy. It's got an insert, you just dump the dice into a well. Also, there's a cardboard sleeve for setting up the cube at the beginning of the game that is oddly satisfying.
yep.
Because you put it on the platform, you dump the cubes in, you give it a little shake, and it's done.
Yep, it's great. It's great. Now, but everything can't be sunshine and roses. So, what are your drawbacks to this game? And I'll be honest, I have very few
Why
drawbacks
don't
to
you
it.
go first? I need to think about this.
All right. So, I mean, the only drawbacks is not actually about the game itself. It's,
Hmm.
I mean, it's a crisis management game that it can get out of hand because it's dice, and sometimes you get those chain reactions going, and it can spiral out of control on you. That is possible. Sometimes it's hard to decide what to do, but
Yeah.
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here. I don't really have a lot. I would say I wish I had a mini expansion of more characters to play, but that's
Mhm.
just because I've now played this game a ton, and so now I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, what else could we do? But honestly, I don't really have anything bad to say. I think as far as a crisis management game goes, I think it's top tier. Unless you don't like rolling dice, in which case this is not a good game for you.
Yeah. I will say there's a lot of discussion in this game, and it's always been positive in my experience of, hey, if you do that, then I can do this and we can do this. And if you are extremely sensitive to alpha gaming, there's a risk there.
That's a good
Or
point.
if you have an extreme alpha gamer in your group, they're gonna want to run this game and tell you what you should do on your turn so they can do what they're gonna do. It's all been positive in the games we've played. You know, we just have a discussion and you point things out that somebody might not have seen and they make the decision and you know, it's gone fine, but it's certainly a point and you know, that's all cooperative games for the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
part.
that's a
But
good point. We tend to play with people who aren't like that, but
yeah.
yeah, that's just something I hadn't thought about. Even the last game we played, which was with two new players, even though like we were going through and we would say, you know, this is something that you can do, and
Hmm.
you know, most of the time they think, okay, I'll do that, but even then, there was times when both of them were like, yeah, but I think I'm gonna do this instead, and it was fine. But yeah, you're right. I can absolutely see, you know, there are those people, but you know, I try not to ever play with them.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be most people's modus operandi.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean that's mostly the biggest thing I can think of. And then the fact that those metal dice are out there taunting us.
Oh my gosh, right? So everyone, you have to understand. I think this game, I think we spent I don't know what $40 on it on Kickstarter or something like that. The metal
Something like that.
dice are 80.
Yeah.
I mean, which you know sounds like a lot of money, but also like these are I don't know, it's like 36 really or 40 like really heavy metal dice. I don't know. It's but gosh, they are taunting me so bad. Like I kind of really want them, but that's so foolish. But
Mm-hmm.
I just have to avoid going seeing them at a con. Like that'll be what'll get me is if I go to Gen Con and they have them there and they're like, we could sell you there for sale. That's gonna be the
They're
day.
only $75 if you buy them right now.
Buy them with cash, 74.50. Oh well. Yeah, yeah, it's oh dangerous. But anyhow, that is Tesseract. Obviously, we're big fans. I think if you like crisis management games, this is one that should be in your collection. As I said, they recently just got in a reprint, so yours will actually be slightly better than ours because ours has that misprint on the tiles. So definitely get it, and then you know taunt Don and I about your better copy, and then you will have to go to a con to maybe get those dice. But that's going to bring us to the end of today, and as always, our favorite part of the show, Don. What are your closing gaming words of wisdom?
So I'm gonna go with patience. Um, one thing we did mention is you and I both came into KublaCon in a bad mood on Friday.
That's true. Yeah, I
No,
forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, no particular reason, just showed up without a lot of energy and, you know, getting irritated at little things. We ended up playing games just the two of us because we didn't want to interact with other people,
Yeah.
which was interesting. Like went to a con and didn't want to talk to people. Uh, but it turned around. I think by the end of the evening on Friday, we were having a good time and enjoying it. And so, you know, don't let that temporary mood ruin your game experience. You know, sometimes it turns around within one game. Sometimes you have to play a couple. But that's, I know, that's my bit of wisdom is, you know, be a little patient with yourself. You know, let yourself experience the mood, get through it, do what you have to do, and then, you know, it'll turn around at some point.
You know, and I'm going to say gold star for us for recognizing we were being curmudgeons.
Yes, I'm very
You
proud
know,
of us.
like, you know, so sometimes you just got to take a moment and be like, you know, maybe it's me.
Hmm.
It definitely was. I remember just driving up, just, it's so hard. If you don't live in the Bay Area, everybody, traffic is terrible, always. And so at night when I'd go home, it's 35 minutes to get home. It took me, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes to get there, you know, right at the end of the school day and just, you know, just grumpy. And then, you know, there's in general, there's all these people. I'm like, people. But yeah, yeah, that's good advice, Don. This is why you get the big bucks on this podcast.
We're waiting for him.
Yeah. Well, you know, if I can get a set of those metal dice, I'll give you one.
Awesome. No worries.
One die per episode. All right. So anyhow, that is the end of the episode. As always, everybody, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Well,
All the wisdom with none of the glare.
okay.